Okay, I think we'll get started then, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to the latest webinar and Q&A session from Parenta. As always, we're really excited to be able to come to you this morning and hopefully provide some interesting and relevant advice during these somewhat tricky times that we find ourselves in. We've got some great guest speakers again today, as we have on the previous meetings. So we've got Jackie Mann, who's spoken on, I think, 2 of our 3 previous sessions. So welcome to Jackie. I'll introduce her properly later on. And we've also got Paul Burton coming on, and he'll be giving us some advice about recruitment, and specifically recruitment for our sector and recruiting apprentices. As always, this session's recorded, and we'll be sending out a copy of the recording afterwards. So please try not to make it too personal. Just think about making it quite generic, because we have had an occasion in the past where people gave some personal details and we had to actually remove those from the recording. And obviously the more information we can share with everybody, the better. And secondly, we really do welcome any questions that you do have. If you've got anything at all you'd like to ask, please put a question into the chat box, and we will go through all of those questions at the end of each speaker's session. I'll read them out, and we'll ask the speaker to provide as much insight as they can in answering those questions for you. My only other request is if everybody can keep themselves on mute, that'd be really helpful. Otherwise, sometimes we get telephones ringing and so on and so forth, which is never ideal. But I think that's probably it for today in terms of introduction. And I'd like to move straight on and introduce Jackie Mann. Jackie, as I said, has been with us a couple of times on these webinars and is our resident HR expert. Jackie's an amazing source of information and advice of all things HR. She's the founder of Mann and Associates, and also HR for Nurseries. And I think she's also written a book, but I can't see in front of me what the name of that book is, so forgive me, Jackie. But generally, Jackie is brilliant at answering any of the questions that anybody has. So without further ado, I'm going to hand straight over to Jackie, and she can give you her update, and then we'll go from there. Thanks, Jackie, all yours.
Okay, thanks, Alan. My book is Recruit, Inspire and Retain.
Recruit, Inspire and Retain.
Recruit, Inspire and Retain. Okay. So have I got my slides there, Gail? Yeah. Okay. So we can go to the second slide. It's probably fine, Gail. Straight on to holidays. I think Alan's done a bit of my introduction. Okay, so I wanted to talk about holiday because as we know, furlough is coming to an end. We haven't had any word from the government yet that they will be changing any of that. So we still need to make it that furlough will be ending. So for our clients, what we've been advising people to do is to request that employees take holiday while they're on furlough. Now, this is something you can do legally. You need to give people the twice the amount of notice that you would want them to take holiday. So if you want them to take 5 days holiday, then you would need to ask them, give them 10 days notice of that. Put that in writing and say, we request that you're going on holiday. Tell them the dates they're going on holiday. The only thing you need to make sure you do is top that up to 100% payment. So they must receive 100% for their holiday. Now, a lot of people have been doing this during furlough, but I've come across a few people recently who haven't been doing this. So what's happened now is all this holiday has been accrued during the holiday year while people have been on furlough. And now they're going to be coming back to work at the end of October into November with all their holiday that they haven't used throughout the year. Or even if they've only used some of it, I would suggest that you still look at asking people to take the holiday. And the main reason for that is the government introduced a new legislation to say that you could carry over 4 weeks holiday. So if you weren't able to take your holiday, you could carry over 4 weeks of your holiday for the next 2 years. Now, for a business, that is not a good decision if you're going to let people do that. So I'm advising people to get people to take their holiday in the actual holiday year. So if you say your holiday year is 1st of January to the 31st of December, whatever they've accrued this year, please try and make sure they take it. So because people are on furlough, you can request that they take the holiday. But when they come back to work, you can do the same thing. So excuse me a minute. So what I would suggest is when people start to return to work, look to see how much holiday that they've actually got, and then look at how many people have got the holidays, and then plan out what that holiday is going to look like and request them to take that holiday entitlement. And they might not be very happy about it sometimes. But the reason I'm saying that is if you allow people to carry over their holiday, so they're 4 weeks, or however much they've got, and they can carry it over for 2 years, what you could find is that, say in 18 months' time, they've not taken any of that holiday, they then decide to leave, you will have to pay them for all that holiday that they didn't take. So that's the reason why I'm saying you really need to clear it. So for business purposes, make sure that you clear the holiday entitlement for the current holiday year. So by requesting when people can take holiday. And if people have had, if your employees have not had much holiday at all, so there's quite a lot left and they all start returning to work, you need to plan out as a business when that's going to be. Now, the employees might be able to decide when they would like the holiday, but actually you might need to take control of it and say, no, this is when I need you all to be taking holiday. This is when the business can allow you to be out. So I really would suggest that you think about that and recommend not letting people carry it over, because if they do leave, you will then have to pay it. So, if your holiday year is 1st January to 31st of December, you will then have whole entitlement for next year. And then anything that they haven't used this year will be carried over. By law, they will be allowed to do that. If they leave next year, you're going to have to pay for any accrued holiday that they've had next year, plus what they didn't use this year. It's going to be very, very costly for a business. You won't be able to claim any of that back through furlough then, so you'll have to pay all of it. So please get people to use their holiday, request it, so that you clear that out of the way. So the next slide is about apprenticeships, which obviously that's what we want to talk about. So we look after a lot of nurseries and we provide them with employment contracts for their staff, handbooks, policies and procedures. And often when people come to us and ask for, we do an HR review, so we'll review any current documents that they have to let them know whether they're up to date or not. We will ask the question, do you have apprentices? And they'll say, yes, we do have apprentices, which is great. But they often don't have the right documentation in place. So they might have an agreement in place, that the apprenticeship agreement, but it might not necessarily be covering them all for that person as an employee. So we've seen some shocking apprentice agreements, but your apprentice contract, so if you think of it as a contract, needs to have all the information in there about their training and about when it ends when it begins and when it ends. And this is a huge thing that we see is some people don't have that. They don't have an end date. So they give people a normal contract, a contract they would give to someone that is just starting with them, which just said you were employed by us from this date. It has no end date. What that means is at the end of the apprenticeship, you then still have this employee who you've then got to try and find some extra work for. You might not always want the apprentice at the end. If you want to keep them, that's great. You need to make sure that you've got your start date and your end date in there. The other thing that we always include in the apprentice contracts is something in there about their training and their qualifications and making sure that they're going to college or they're doing their college work. Because yes, there are some great apprentices out there, but there's also some that don't actually really want to do the work. If you don't have anything in your contract to say that you can dismiss them because they're not going to college and they're not doing their work, then you are really going to struggle if you've just got a standard apprentice agreement that doesn't include those things. So that is something that we see a lot of, that people say, actually, I don't want this apprentice now, they're coming to an end, but they've only given them a standard employment contract with no end date in there. Or they find that they're not going to college, they're not doing their work, and they don't know what to do. And they actually, because they haven't got any end dates in there, or they've got nothing to say that if you don't do the work, then we don't have to keep you. You do need to make sure that they're still covered by all of the other employment law rights. And often that's not in an apprenticeship agreement either. So it will talk about the holidays, it will talk about any training, it will talk about any additional training that you give them that you have to pay for. So not that's the training that's done by the training provider that's covered by costs, but if you're actually paying for some additional training for them and then they leave, you can also have clauses in there about how they would need to repay back any of that money if they leave. So that would all be included in there. So I can't stress enough, we have lots of problems with apprentices that are not performing particularly well. And then it's very difficult trying to move them out of the business. Because also if you've got an apprentice and they've been with you more than 2 years and then they finish their apprenticeship, they also have employment law rights. So they can claim unfair dismissal. So you really need that contract that will state this is when it ends, you're an apprentice, you're not guaranteeing them any work after that. So that's really is one of the key things that you need to have in there. We also make sure in our contracts that you've got something in there about suitability to work with children. Often this isn't in people's contracts. You know, if anything was to happen, you need to make sure that's covered off as well. So taking on apprentices is great, but make sure that you're protecting the business by having those right clauses that are in there. And then finally, I want to talk about working time, which is also mainly for your apprentices. So with the working time, you've got the next slide there, Gail? It's only a pretty picture, that's all. That's it. When we review people's contracts and we ask them about apprentices, now depending on what age the apprentice is, but I know lots of people like to take on apprentices that are under 18 because of the cost is one of the things there that they like to have them under 18. Then the working time regulations are slightly different from anybody over 18. And I find that often this is not being followed. They should not be working more than 40 hours if they're over 18. And I do see contracts for apprentices where they are working 42, 45 hours a week. Legally, you can't do that. They need to be working less than that, and it needs to be 8 hours a day. And then the other big thing is that the apprentices need to have a break after 4.5 hours of work. So if they're working with you, you know, normally you will have someone works for you, they're working 6 hours a day, then they're entitled to a 20-minute break. But if they're an apprentice and they're under 18, if they're working more than 4.5 hours a day, then they're entitled to a 30-minute break. And again, I don't see this happening all of the time. So you really just need to make sure that you are following the guidelines, you are following the working time regulations with your apprentices. You know, they are young people. They need to make sure that you're looking after them and you're protecting them. So that was really just a little bit that we notice on working time. So that's really what I wanted to say today. So I'm happy to take any questions if we've got any. If you'd like to get in touch with me, then there's my details on Instagram, Facebook, or we've got a Recruit, Inspire, Retain Facebook group. If you'd like to join that, where we answer lots of questions, you can join that. So I'd love to connect if you'd like to. So happy to take any questions, or if people have got questions at the end, whether that's about what I've spoke about now or any other HR issue or anything to do with furlough.
Brilliant, Jackie, thank you so much. Jackie, you mentioned then there that you see sometimes employment contracts for apprentices which are not as robust as you would like them. Can you give us a sense of how often that occurs in sort of percentage terms? You know, is it?
I would say 90% of the time.
Oh wow, it's that bad. And
yeah.
And of the things that you mentioned, which is the most common? I mean, the working time regulations one was one that struck me as being the one that most people miss, I would think. But in your experience, which is the one that people miss most? Yeah,
they do miss that. A lot of them miss the end date. You know, they have just a normal employment contract, which doesn't have, you know, that your date will end. So we would normally speak to find out how long their apprenticeship is going to be for and put that date in there and say, this will be the end of your employment, or when you finish, or if it's prior to that, if you finish your apprenticeship prior to that end date, then your employment will end. And often that's the bit that's missed. We often get people saying, I've got an apprentice coming to the end of their apprenticeship, but I either don't want them because they're not very good, or I haven't got any role for them, but what can I do? And if you've only got a normal contract, you are going to struggle to get that person out of the business. So yeah, that is probably one of the main things.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So Claire has asked, what happens if the apprentice has not finished their course when their contract runs out. Because, you know, I for one know that that's quite a common experience where apprentices run longer than we would all like.
Yeah, so that's where we would make sure that we're putting in there what the end date of that contract is going to be. If it finishes early, obviously they would finish their employment early. If that happened, I would say you need to make sure that you are sending them a letter to say that it will be extended for a certain amount of time until they have completed that apprenticeship, but making sure that there's no guarantee that they are going to get a job after that, and be careful if it's starting to go over the 2 years. But I would also ask the question on, you know, why haven't they finished it? Which is why the clauses we put in there to say, you know, if you're not going to college, if you're not doing your work, then we can actually start to take you down the disciplinary route, which could end in them being dismissed, because I'm sure you've experienced apprentices who just don't want to do the work. It all sounds quite good at the beginning, but then they don't want to. And it's a struggle if you haven't got those clauses in your contract to actually then exit that person from the business.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm sure it would be. So what you're saying then is just extend the contract, but make sure you've confirmed it in writing to cover off anything, and then be careful if it goes over the 2 years.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, be careful. Unless you've got to say that this is the end date, but they still will have employment rights.
Okay. The other thing you just mentioned there, which I hadn't really thought through, is the opportunity for disciplinary action if the apprentice isn't progressing with their course sufficiently. And I know that's something that we all would like to avoid, but it is relatively common that apprentices or some apprentices don't progress in their course in a timely manner.
Yeah.
So would that be what? Can you talk me through what that would look? That would just be called in for and start down with an informal warning, and then go into a formal warning.
Yeah, so it would really be, you know, bringing them into the meeting. You know, and a lot of these people have just left school. You know, the younger ones, they're not really sure what they should be doing. The first place at work, and then so it's getting them into to explain what the expectations are. You know, you are expected to do this work, and this is what we need you to do. You know, if it's their first job, they don't know that they could potentially be losing their job if they don't do these things. So explaining that to them, being fair, setting them some targets to say, this is what we expect you to do. If you don't do that, then we are going to have to look at what the next steps are going to be. And that could be that we have to start going down the disciplinary route, or it could be capability route. You know, it could be, is the person not able to do this work? Are they not capable of doing it? Or is it disciplinary, which is conduct? They just don't want to do it. You know, there's a difference there. And then looking at how you could give the apprentice some help or some support. You know, why is it they aren't able to complete their work? But if they just, as we know, some of them just don't want to do it or can't be bothered, then yes, those people, we would start to go down the disciplinary route and state, you know, if they aren't going to be doing the work, if they don't finish their college work. You know, we do get people phoned to say, the training providers have been on the phone to say, you know, they're not doing their work, they've not attended the placements or anything like that, then we can go down that disciplinary route.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. And let's hope we don't have to do that very often, but it's useful to know. So Elizabeth has asked if we can put back on the slide with your contact details. We'll do that at the end, Elizabeth, and we'll also send the contact details out to everybody when we conclude the session today. And someone else has asked, is it not worth saving staff holidays in case we have another lockdown and they might need to be used there? Obviously, we all had the wonderful news yesterday from the Prime Minister, and it's clearly another potential lockdown. So what would your thoughts be on that, Jackie?
I would say if they've got some holiday left, I would ask them to take it now if they're still on furlough. If they're still on furlough, get them to use their holiday, because you can use the furlough payments to offset, so that makes it cheaper for the business. I think if we have another lockdown, I think the government is going to have to look at furlough again and see what they can do to support businesses. There might be some that they will support and perhaps others that they won't. I wouldn't save the holiday myself. I would get it cleared so that it's gone and that you've not got that accrued holiday. And if somebody is still on furlough, it's a great time to get the government to be contributing to part of that, so you haven't got to pay all of that money while the business is not bringing in as much money as normal.
Okay, thank you. Just thinking back to a previous session with you, Jackie, I'm sure you said, and correct me if I'm wrong, that when a member of staff takes holiday and they're on furlough, the employer needs to ratchet back up the amount of money. Can you just help me get my head around that again, please?
Yeah, so whatever the furlough payment is, and obviously with nurseries it'll be different because of some of the funding elements that they get, but you can use the furlough payment for the holiday, but you then have to top it up to 100%. So if the employees, whatever payment the employee is getting, it needs to be their normal daily rate of pay that they need to get for their holiday, so that they get 100% for any holiday that you request them. So if you're getting they're getting 80% on furlough, which is obviously funded, some of it funded by the government, but not all of it now. And you will have to pay for their pension and NI, and then you will have to pay that gap. So top it up to 100%.
Okay, great, thank you. Are there any more questions for Jackie? Anybody? I think we're approaching the end of that session. I'm assuming not. So Jackie, thank you so much as always for joining us today. I'm pretty sure there'll be some more questions for you at the end. So if you're able to hang on, that'd be brilliant. Yeah. So everybody, I'd like to introduce you all to Paul Burton now. Paul is an expert in educational recruitment. He works for Parenta, but he's quite new to our company and has been involved in the educational recruitment sector for 17 years. And Paul's going to talk to us today about some of the things that he's seen in the marketplace over the last couple of weeks, particularly as we've all gone back to work, or maybe not now, and going on to talk about when the best time is to recruit. So Paul, over to you.
Thank you very much, Alan. Thank you, Jackie, for that session. It was very informative. So over the last 8 weeks since I've been at Apprentice, I've seen a massive big increase in the demand of settings looking for the recruiting of new apprentices. So there's a few reasons why we've actually seen this gap in the market. So we've had quite a few natural losses that have happened within the market. So retirement, career changes due to, it's been in the media that quite a lot of workers in the early years sector are quite disillusioned. So this has given them a chance to go back into education or and also look for a change. But also we've seen a massive demand. It's not all doom and gloom. I suppose within the recruitment team here at Parenta, a lot of settings are looking to increase the staffing ratios, and employing an apprentice is a really good and cost-effective way of staffing, especially with the way that the new way of working is, and different hours that children are coming and attending the early years settings, and you've had to change with the times and accommodate the parents, and also the new government incentive has been a massive motivator behind settings, increasing that staffing and looking to I suppose train that next generation of future managers, room leaders and deputy managers within your settings. So as Alan said, I've got many years of experience working in education recruitment, and 17 years in total working with schools, and that's all that I've specialised in. Now, so there's 3 of us within the recruitment team at Parenta. There's myself, another Paul and Lee, who between us all, we have got 45 years of education recruitment specialism. So we know what you're actually looking for within an apprentice or an employee that you want. So recruit for attitude and train for skill is something that, if we get that right at the first instance, we're going to be presenting candidates to you that are going to be adding value. But also, as Jackie was saying, that 90% of apprentices that are not actually committed to the apprenticeship or not doing the work, hopefully we can safeguard that kind of disgruntled and problem within the employment that you'll receive, and hopefully then we'll get you that better caliber of candidate. And we are seeing a massive influx of candidates coming from many different walks of life. So we're not getting it's either hairdressing, hair and beauty, childcare. We're getting graduates looking for apprenticeships now within childcare. We're getting, you know, adults that have been made redundant, and this is the time to go and change the career and train into something new. So we can sort out the wheat from the chaff and present the candidates that are actually going to add value to your settings. Because we know how long it takes for you guys to recruit, to shift through and shortlist CVs, you know, disregard the ones that have got spelling errors and grammatic, that have got loads of grammatic errors across them. And that takes time. And then you've got to call them to get them into interview, and then they don't turn up, and then you've got to start from the beginning. So we know that you specialise in education. You specialise in educating our early years sector, you know, the young children, and rightly so. So we're here as a team for you to spend time educating and managing your teams, and let us recruit for you, and spend time shifting through those CVs, sorting out those candidates, and presenting these candidates to you, the ones that will actually make a difference to your settings and the children, and want to be in the role of an apprenticeship as well. So we are seeing lots of candidates, and we're here to help you. So I was helping a setting just last week that she was in a dire straits of wanting an apprentice, and it was coming to, she wanted somebody to start a week last Monday, and she was saying, I just need somebody. And my advice to her, if you're just going to take somebody just for the matter of taking them because you need them, then that's the wrong recruitment choice. You need to recruit somebody that gets you excited, how is going to make a difference, and that's what we did. We helped her get the right person, and we presented them to her, and she started successfully and has been through the all with enrolment, and has started the apprenticeship dead on time for her. So you know, so that, you know, getting you the right candidate is what's paramount to us, because they need to, you know, make a difference with your setting, but also with the children as well. Right, so our recruitment service is absolutely free of charge. All you've got to do is commit to your apprentice to completing their apprenticeship with Parenta. We'll do everything else. What Gail's going to do is, if you do have a recruitment need, we're going to be putting on the Find an Apprentice form out to you all after the webinar. But also you can call us directly on 0800 002 9242. And we'll be happy to go through those requirements for you and help you through that journey of getting the right person to make a difference within your setting. Now, we can vet the candidates, we can arrange the interviews, and we can do all that for you, to make sure that you're not wasting your time, because your time's valuable. Now, the government incentive has been a massive, big driver to increasing the apprentices. So I'll go over what the apprenticeship bonus scheme is from the government. So as an employer, you will be eligible to receive an incentive payment for hiring a new staff member that has not been employed in your setting within the last 6 months. Okay, so you'll still receive the for all new apprentices from 16 to 18, they're £1,000, but also a candidate that's on the educational healthcare plan up to the age of 25, that's incorporated as well. So potentially from the government, you'll receive up to £3,000. So that's from the 16 to 18-year-old. Okay, you will receive an additional funding from the government from 19 to 24 of £2,000, and then 1,500 for 25 and over, that you'll receive, which is paid in 2 instalments of 50%, one on the 90th day and one on the 365th day. And these, you need to claim this through the Digital Apprenticeship Scheme portal. You need to have registered these candidates by the 30th of April to claim that incentive payment. So you are getting a little bit of funding, something to help you with maybe some new resources for your settings that can make a difference to the attainment of your pupils as well. So yeah, so it's really painless. We're here to help you, and we're here to assist you all the way through that recruitment process. And it is a service that is absolutely free of charge. So come and use us, please.
Thanks, Paul. Can you just run through that those monetary amounts, please, again, the amount of money that the employers get for taking on an apprentice? Because it's quite a lot of money and you ran through it really fast. So let's just...
Right, sorry. Right, okay. I'll say a little bit more slowly. So you will receive up to £3,000. So from 16 to 18, you'll receive £3,000 in total. Okay. From 19 to 24, you'll receive an additional funding of £2,000. And for the more mature learner of 25 and over, it is 1,500. Okay.
Brilliant. And it's paid in instalments, Paul. So what's the frequency of those instalments?
So it's paid in 2 instalments, Alan, and you need to register through the Digital Apprenticeship Service. You need to have done this by the 30th of April. And it's in 2 instalments on the 90th day of employment and also the 365th day. And that's, 50% split.
I was aware of the £1,500 for adults, but I have to say that £3,000 for 16 to 18, that's such a massive amount of money to everybody, particularly at this time when we're all of us struggling to find extra revenue. I think that's a massive win, isn't it? The people you're working with, are they seeing that as a real advantage?
Well, they are, yeah, because this is funding that they wouldn't normally have, and it's really making a difference to the setting. So it's a massive cost-effective way of sort of like staffing up and training the next generation, but also up to £3,000 that can really make a difference with some of the settings and what they're going to contribute to, outside the normal area, improving their outside spaces and also the resources within the settings as well. Okay. And staff training.
Yeah, good. Thank you. All right, so we've had a couple of questions come in, but I think most of them have been answered either by you, Paul, or by our team on the site there. And I think Gail's just highlighted that we've actually got a full guide about the incentive payments. So we'll include that in the mail that we send after this event. So we'll include that guide and a copy of this presentation. Are there any other questions that anybody would like to ask, either of Paul or me or of Jackie, whilst we're all together? Because now is the time. We're happy to answer anything. This is the embarrassing bit where I have to make conversation waiting for something. Right. Buckingham First Nursery, do the grants apply to existing students? I think not, Paul. It's only for new employment, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's for the new bonus scheme payment is for a candidate that hasn't been employed for the last 6 months within your setting. Okay. So that's clear. Yeah, you could, if somebody has been made redundant 6 months prior, bring them back, you would be eligible, but it's for new employees, so that have not been employed in the setting for the last 6 months. Okay, great, thank you. We've got a question from Alexis saying, when there are only 2 members of staff in the room, 1 qualified, apprentices cannot be included as a second member of staff. Is this your understanding? Jackie, do you know the answer to that one? You've disappeared on me, Jackie, I can't see you.
Here. Sorry.
Don't worry.
Let me just put my,
do you know about the ratios for a second member of staff? Would you be able to answer that one?
Yeah, I mean, for as far as I'm aware, the apprentices aren't covered in ratios. That's my understanding.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Okay. So Martin Angic asked, if we take on an apprentice that's been made redundant from a closing setting, are we entitled to any funding? That's quite complex. Paul, what's your view on that?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, so if an apprentice has been made redundant from a previous setting, is the employer able to claim any funding? I presume they would claim the second amount if they were on program, as it were, for 356 days.
As far as I'm aware, if they're not employed by that setting, then they would qualify.
Okay, so we may need to get clarification on that one for you, ladies, and get that one cleared up. But we think you're entitled to it, but we'll get you that clarification. Next question. So this is from Jennifer. It says, "Hi Paul.
If you're working with more than one apprenticeship organisation, do you need to have just one digital account?
Yes, so each setting should have their own digital apprenticeship scheme account. So it's one account per setting. Even if you have even if you're a chain, it's an individual account per setting.
Okay, thank you. Just going back to the previous question, Gillian has cleared it up for us. EYFS says 50% of staff need to be qualified. If you deem an apprentice to be far enough on in their training, then they can be counted as a non-qualified member of staff. I hope that helps. Are there any more questions from anybody? No. Anybody want to ask anything else of Jackie whilst we have her? Anybody got any other HR issues, even if it's not relevant to apprenticeships? I'm sure Jackie wouldn't mind answering them for us. Okay, we just have one question just come in. If the staff is isolated from symptoms, can we put them back on furlough as long as it's around? I'm not sure I understand that. Do you?
No, if someone's isolating, then they need to be on the SSP. So because they're not fit to work. So you only go on furlough because there's no work for you to do. But if you've got work for them to do, then you can't put them on furlough. So they've got symptoms, they would need to get the SSP, which is you can get for from day one. So not like normal SSP, which you have to have the 3 waiting days. It kicks in from day one, and that's what you can claim back from the government.
Great, thank you, Jackie. Nick has just asked, what if we already have a potential candidate? Could they join your apprenticeship programme and work within our setting? Paul?
Absolutely, yes.
There you go, that's a nice easy one. Thank you very much. Tiana is saying there's some discrepancy between information regarding apprentices in ratio. So we'll come back and get that clarified. So somebody else has asked, I think this one's for you, Jackie. What if there are no symptoms, but the bubble is isolating?
Yeah, if they're isolating, then they still can get the SSP. They can't go on furlough because there is work there for them. So that's the key thing to remember. You can't put people on furlough if there is work for them.
Okay, fine, thank you. Catherine's asking, I think this one's for you again, Jackie. Any advice regarding a pregnant member of staff working in the environment when in a wraparound care setting based on a school site, please?
I think the thing is, with people who are pregnant, it's been shown that at the moment that there is no further risk to someone who is pregnant unless they've got some underlying health issues. So they would be treated just the same as anyone else. Although we are finding that a lot of pregnant women are not too happy about that. They are coming up with lots of different excuses, and I suppose in a way you can't blame them. But unless they've got an underlying health issue and they've got, you know, a heart condition, which is one of the big issues, then they are at no further risk. This is what the I can't remember what they're called now, the obstetrician, the gynae midwife association has said that they are at no extra risk. Do a normal risk assessment though to check that you would do for somebody who is pregnant. Otherwise, there's no extra risk for them.
Okay, thank you. Dina has asked, I think this one's for you, Paul. Do we have to pay for training outside of nursery hours? So I think that's relating to an apprenticeship. And does the employer have to pay for any additional training outside of nursery hours?
I'll have to get back to you on that. I'll see.
I can answer that question if you like.
Yeah, please, Jackie. Thank you.
If it's training that's been required to do for their job, then yes, you will have to pay them because it's working time. So you must pay them their working hours as well as if you're paying for that training anyway, but you must pay them for the hours that they work. Otherwise, you're going to find that you, especially if it's an apprentice, they could be actually under the national minimum wage, and then you will be in trouble. But this is an issue that I had with quite a lot of nurseries. So even if they have staff who are doing a degree, for instance, so they're spending 1 day at college, so they work 4 days a week in the nursery, and then they go 1 day to college, and they say, well, but we don't pay them for that day. You should be paying them for that day. It's working time. It's working time regulations. If anybody's doing training for their job that you've asked them to do, then you have to pay them for that time.
Okay, thank
So
you.
if they're condensing their hours, which a lot of people do, they do 40 hours over 4 days, then they go to uni for another day, you should still be paying their wages that day.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jackie. Jackie, Claire has asked, if someone is isolating, do they need a sick note for SSP?
No, they don't need a sick note if they are isolating, because if they've been asked to isolate, then they should get a text from 111 or from the track and trace people who would say that they need to isolate, and that's enough proof. So the doctors haven't got time to do the fit notes anymore, I'm afraid.
Okay, fine. We're talking of track and trace. Rachel's just asked if nurseries need to subscribe to the track and trace system, or are their existing visitor declarations sufficient? Do you have any view on that, Jackie?
I don't, to be honest, because I think, you know, the track and trace is it really working properly? We don't know yet. I mean, I think if you subscribe to it and then you find out, then you're going to have to take some action on it. Asking your visitors declarations, I think probably you should do that anyway. Make sure you know where they've been and what they've been up to. But the track and trace, it's whether it's working, you know, I think it's got to be an individual thing.
Okay, thank you. I'm not going to make comment on that because I live in a different country where it's been working for months, but there you go.
Yeah.
Catherine's just given us an update on the issue of pregnancy and saying that midwives seem to be taking lots of different things into account, but basically saying definitely no from 28 weeks. Tiana, what if staff can only take public transport to a test centre and the public transport refuse them? What do we do about payment?
What if staff can only take public transport to a test centre?
Yeah, so if they have to go and have a test, effectively,
Yeah.
should they be paid for that?
Not effectively, no, I don't think they would be.
Okay.
Are they doing this in working time, are they? That's a strange question. It's not one I've come across before. Public transport taxi refused them service to get there. What do we do about payment?
I don't think you can get public transport to a test centre. It's got to be by private car or a postal test.
I don't quite understand the question, to be honest.
Okay, well, we'll see if Tiana puts any more clarity.
Yeah.
Whilst we do, any advice for the wording of a training agreement for the employer paying the costs of their employees' level 3 training that it needs to be repaid? I presume what that means is, you know, if the employee leaves the setting, can they ask for some of the payment to be repaid?
Yeah. So if this is not an apprentice, if it's an apprentice, we would have it in the apprentice contract. If it's an employee that's been with you and then deciding that, you know, they need to then go and do some extra training and you want them to do that, you need a separate training agreement for that. And you can actually put in any of the percentages that you want to put in yourself, actually. There's no legal requirement what it would be. Normally, what you'll see is that, you know, if you leave, you know, 2 months after you finished your training, you have to pay back 90% of the course. If it's, you know, 6 months, you might have to pay back, you know, 60% of the course. So but you can choose yourself what you want that to be, but it needs to be a separate document from your employment contract, because if you had that in your employment contract right at the very beginning, apart from apprentices, because they are training, then that can be seen as that the employee's got no choice but to accept it, because if they want the job, they have to accept those terms. So a training agreement for additional training should be a separate document.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. Just going back to the question about the taxi and the testing, Tiana's put some clarification in. And she's saying she had a staff member try to take a taxi to the test centre but was refused. That member of staff is now not at work because they haven't been tested, and puts them in a tough spot. And I think what she's asking then is really what her opportunities around employment are for that member of staff.
I think from that one, you know, why is she going for a test? Has she got symptoms, or has she been in contact with someone that has got symptoms, so she needs to go and get a test? So effectively, if that's the case, then she could get SSP, but you need to know why she's going for a test. If she's got symptoms, she shouldn't be at work anyway, but it might be that she can claim SSP.
Okay, thank you, Jackie. And then just, again, going back a question, I read Catherine's comment that midwives are saying 28 weeks should be the limit. The question is really, Jackie, have you seen any different advice to that for pregnant women? Do you share that view?
Yeah, we're not seeing that there's any additional risks. We've not been informed that there's any additional risk for people that are pregnant, unless they've got some underlying conditions. You know, the thing is, if they're 28 weeks pregnant, then they could go on to their maternity leave early. What you've got to be careful of is if you send them home because you don't feel it's safe, then you will have to pay them full pay because you're sending them home.
Okay, fine.
So if the midwives are feeling that it's not safe for them to be at work, then they should be getting a fit note from their GP.
Okay.
And then they'll get normal SSP for that.
All right, lovely, thank you. And then another question is time from Dina, and she's asking about isolation. What happens to payments if a member of staff is asked to isolate?
So if they're asked to isolate and it's by the track and trace, then they will be able to claim this statutory sick pay from the government.
Brilliant. Okay. And I think then that's the end of our questions. I can see one coming in from Gail. So I'll just give it a second or two for her to finish typing. But if not, here we go. Okay, no, it's a statement to remind me to do something, which is to wrap it up. So thank you everybody for joining us today, and thank you to Jackie once again for your time, Jackie. It's been brilliant, and thank you to Paul for giving your view on everybody. I just wanted to just to highlight, you know, at the end of the day, clearly everybody in our sector is struggling at the moment, but the opportunity to get these extra payments from the government has got to be a benefit to anybody who is an employer. So we'd strongly urge you to do that. And as Paul has said, our recruitment team will be happy to support you in doing that and making sure that we find you suitable candidates at no cost. One thing I would add, though, is at the moment, no Apprentice staff will be entering into nursery premises. And the reason we've taken that decision, and I know many other training providers have done the same, is that obviously if we send a member of staff into one setting and then they go into another setting, we've got risk of cross-contamination. So if we do take an apprentice on with you, then we will not be entering the premises until such time as this wonderful COVID thing is behind us. So we do a lot of our observations and a lot of our visits are all done remotely. And I have to say, in the vast majority of cases, the employers and students have found that to be really positive and actually been much easier. But just to give everybody that sort of reassurance that we will not be attending at this time until we've moved it on. I think that's it for today. Of course, if anybody wants any other questions, please feel free to reach out to us. And as I said earlier, we'll include the details for Paul and for Jackie in the emails that we send out. But other than that, we'll wrap up. And thank you very much, everybody, for joining. And we hope to see you on our next webinar in a few weeks' time. Thank you all very much. Take care.
Bye.